Many years ago in a remote town, there was a goblin who searched for gold, had powers, and killed people, but a couple of guys burned him and threw him in a well. And obviously that didn't stay that way, because the goblin revived, and now he wants revenge. That's why today on the Summarizer, Leprechaun Returns, or the killer crazy goblin is back. This is the story of Lila, a girl who's on a trip to a rather old town to turn into a perfect green living abode, an old house where her mother used to live, who was supposedly crazy and saw weird monsters. But the trip starts to get complicated when strange things start to happen, like when in a nightmare she sees Leprechaun asking her for gold, or when she arrives in town and the guy who drives the cab starts talking about her mother in the house.
She didn't tell you anything about the place where you're going?
No.
Well, it's probably because everything's all right now.
This guy seems to be hiding something, and Lila doesn't really believe him, but apparently he met her mother and asks her how she is.
How is she?
She passed away last year.
But otherwise okay?
Yes, thank you.
Anyway, Lila arrives at the house, the guy drops his cell phone, and before leaving he tells her that if something strange happens, she must look in the basement. There we meet Katie, who is the nerd who will be in charge of fixing the electricity in the house, and Rose, who is the super hysterical and unbearable leader of the fraternity.
And it's time to get to work. Jesus, Mayor, what is the point of you being here if you're not going to participate? Literally, it's the worst thing that could happen right now. No.
Ah yes, because in the house, there's no electricity, no internet, no phone, and no water. However, the latter is solved because they put a pump in a demonic water well and get it from there. Also in the house is this alcoholic blonde named Meredith and two fraternity friends. Matt, who's there because he likes to film things, and Andy, who's there because he's dating Katie. While all this is going on, the guy in the cab realizes he forgot his cell phone, so he goes back to the house, but he starts hearing strange noises, and when he gets close to the well, someone throws water on him. So the guy gets in the car a little bit worried and starts to get a terrible stomach ache, which is normal if you drink rotten water from a 25-year-old well. What is not normal is that he spits out a clover and that something starts to grow inside his belly, and what is even less normal is that a killer goblin comes out of it. Back at home, Lila tells her friends that for many years she took care of her mother because she was crazy and she used to see monsters and things like that. Anyway, her mother died a year ago and it doesn't matter much. So now they all go to sleep, but without realizing that the dwarf was spying on them. And on top of that, when Lila goes to sleep, she sees the fat guy of the cab dead. Still, when she gets up, she realizes it was all a nightmare and goes down to the basement to fix a water leak. But nothing happens anyway, because Lila fixes everything, and as the hysterical one appears, the goblin does nothing. So during the day, they spend the hours flying a drone and fixing things in the house. Meanwhile, the goblin realizes that he can't handle his powers very well, so he decides to start killing people to get them back, and attacks the postal worker who had nothing to do with it. But at night, the goblin enters the house and attacks Lila. There he says that he was thrown into a well, they saw him melt, but he survived thanks to a gold coin or something like that. The important thing is that the dwarf is looking for his gold, and attacks Lila and the cameraman. After this, Matt thinks that what hit him was an animal, and they start looking for the rest of the group. But meanwhile, the leprechaun met Meredith, and as they are both alcoholics, they hit it off and even take a selfie together. There they find the hysterical one, who is more hysterical than ever, and Lila and the alcoholic one tell them that they saw a damn goblin.
It could be a crackhead who got a hold of the wrong stuff.
It's a leprechaun!
So now they go back to look for the rest of the group, who are behind the house trying to fix the electricity. But when they arrive, the gnome has already found Andy.
Hello, Andy.
And Andy does what anyone would do if a 3-foot-tall dwarf tries to attack you. No, well, not that, but he fights. The rest of them want to escape, but they realize that they don't have the car key and that also the hysterical one is still alone inside the house. There, the gnome attacks her, but she defends herself, and though they have about 2 minutes to escape because the gnome is tidying shoes, she hides inside the house. In the end, Katie finds her, and though she doesn't want to leave the house, she convinces her to come out. Meanwhile, in another part of the house, Meredith tells Lila that the best thing to do is hide in the basement. And here I thought that both of them were stupid, but in reality, the stupid one is only Lila, because it was a trap, and when she enters, Meredith leaves her locked up. Then she comes out with the car key, tells everyone that Lila died, and they all escape. The dwarf is in though, but they also do what anyone would do if a leprechaun gets in your car: get him the fuck out and leave the house. But I don't know why the one driving is the alcoholic, and on top of that, the leprechaun appears on top of the drone, and though they manage to crash into him, they end up crashing too. After that, Meredith tells the others that Lila is alive, and they all try to escape from the goblin who is still alive. But the alcoholic starts running through some sprinklers and the goblin attacks her. And while Matt tells the rest of the group that he's going to stay there to stop the goblin so they can go help their friend. At that point, Lila went to the basement and found the corpse of the fat guy from the cab, who now turned into a zombie, I think?
Are you a zombie?
Well, no, it's not a zombie. I don't know what it is, but let's continue. The important thing is that the zombie tells her to look behind some boxes to find the gold. Lila takes out a brick, finds a map. I don't know how she finds out that the clovers are her weakness, and goes out to look for the goblin's gold. Meanwhile, Matt turns on the drone to look for the dwarf, but with the powers, the leprechaun ends up getting the drone to attack him. Is this a joke? Get behind a tree, for God's sakes, do something. Well, never mind. The rest of the group meet up with Lila and all together find the hidden gold. But there's a problem.
What problem?
Apparently, Rose used some of the goblin's gold to finance the fixing up of the house, so now they can't get it back, and as the dwarf approaches, they think of a plan to stop him. Yes, this entry happens in the middle of the movie and makes no sense. Let's continue. Back in the house, Lila brings him the gold, but when he starts to count it, he realizes it's a trap and the rest of the group attacks him. There, they put iron things around him because it seems to be his weakness, and another one of the girls makes the electricity come back to throw him a clover juice that apparently is another one of his weaknesses and finally kills him. And I wish it was over, but the movie goes on because now, to prevent it from coming back to life, they have to set fire to all the remains of the goblin. So while the hysterical girl stays cleaning up, the rest go looking for wood. But just at this moment, many goblins start to appear and end up attacking her. Now the dwarves are united and once again revived, and then finally the last fight between the goblin assassin and what's left of our group of characters starts. At the end, the dwarf catches fire, the two girls escape, and the house explodes. I don't know why it explodes, nor why Rose falls and gets nailed, but none of this movie makes much sense anyways. And finally, the one that also explodes is the goblin. And why does he explode?
No idea.
Anyway, the police arrive, Lila is still seeing the fat zombie, and I guess Rose goes to the hospital to treat the bleeding. Oh, and at the end, they say another phrase that makes no sense either.
We just learned that sometimes the best green footprint is no footprint.
And for sure, now you are wondering, what happened to the dwarf?
No, and I don't care.
Well, actually, he is alive, only now he is poor, he hitchhikes on the road, and his face is all burned. That was a summary of Leprechaun Returns. Comment which series or movie you'd like me to summarize for future videos. See you later.
Go to work.
Okay, bye.